Yeah. So, what is difficult decision making? Sometimes in life we have to make decisions where we have to evaluate the choices, benefit risk versus ratio, which we all as a scientist try to do a lot. And in this kind of situation, I think it's never easy to make a decision. So, I bring you Shenaz, who I know since my childhood, and I still up to this day look up to her because she was this really young woman who goes to a different country where things are extremely different for her, and she breaks the boundaries where she actually proves herself. And from someone who was always told that you can't do this and you can't do that, she breaks the barriers and she becomes a space scientist. So I think there's a lot that I always look up to her for how to make this decision. And I always ask her, how did you do that? How did you think about it? So I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to really get to know Shehnaz a little bit, and also how she makes all the difficult decisions, and whatever life throws at her, she really throws back at life. So Shehnaz, over to you. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Zainab, for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. So my name is Shanaz Soni, and Zainab and I are connected through we are blood relatives. We actually so that is interesting that my cousin from Pakistan, who is herself broken the boundary, and now she's living in Netherlands, right? Is
That's true.
actually asking me questions about how did I break the boundary. So yeah, it's a great conversation, and I do feel very privileged that I was given an opportunity to break the boundary on the first place. But it's partly because, the way the law of attraction works is that when you are one of those person who is not satisfied with your current reality, then you end up attracting circumstances that gives you an opportunity to open. However, it doesn't come easy. It always comes with a lot of challenges. It comes with risk. It comes with you having to take a leap of faith. And for me, I have done that various time in my life that now I actually encourage other people to do it. Because if I wouldn't have done it, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, right? So to me, I'm so glad that I have taken the journey. And yes, when I came to United States of America, I came via arranged marriage after talking to a man for 1 hour. And he opened the door for this new world for me where I initially felt like I don't know how I'm going to survive because I didn't speak English. I didn't know the culture. I was with the man that I barely knew. We didn't have any money. So there were every obstacle that one can run into was there. But in my case, I was like, okay, roll up the sleeve and let's just get going, right? I didn't know how to cook, and I had to cook because if I don't cook, I would get rice aroni that wasn't my type of food. So I knew that I had to get myself in the game. And I did get myself in the game by working really hard, learning to speak English, working in a dry cleaning shop, learning to understand money, doing all those step by step things. I kept on doing it, even though at night I would cry a lot. Because for the first year, I cried a lot because I couldn't talk to my mom. I couldn't afford to talk to my mom because it was pretty expensive. We didn't have WhatsApp application on the smartphone to use for free phone calls. So there are so many things that happened in that 1 year that grew me to be where I am today. And that is what I'm here to tell that we all have that inner spark in us to do what needs to be done to transform your circumstances and make the most of it.
So thank you, Shanaz, for sharing everything. That is truly inspiring. But if someone sees you now, they see a space scientist who works at NASA. So how did this change happen, and what made you take this decision?
So, first of all, in my case, when I was going to UC Irvine for my electrical engineering, I was also learning English. And when I graduated, I knew that I wanted to work on innovative projects. I wanted to work on something that was unique. But I also knew that I had to be in the right immigration status to even get a job. So while I was going through my engineering, I was making sure I already had a green card and I applied for citizenship. and my citizenship paperwork got lost. So it took multiple attempts for it to actually, which caused it to be further delayed. But I timed it in a way that when I finished my education, my citizenship was there. And that helped me to get my first job. And my first job was at the Hughes Satellite Com in El Segundo, California. And it was working on a satellite phone, which was a very unique phone. It was something that was done by Martin Marietta, which is the company in London. And my first job kind of created a good foundation for me because I always wanted to work on programs that were very unique and very innovative. So I worked on Inmarsat, then I worked on International Space Station. I did lots of coding for the International Space Station. Then I moved on to, like a security clearance project. I worked on missiles, missile defense, GMD. I worked on future combat system. I worked on different projects that were kind of like stretching the boundary of technology. And that's how I made my way home to NASA, working on human landing system right now. So my interest in stretching the boundary technologically is the reason that I'm a rocket scientist at NASA right now. So to me, like I chose the path, and it wasn't easy for someone like me because I'm an immigrant. So I had to have the right immigration paperwork, right degree, the right language skill, and overcome all that while I was still married to my first husband and making babies. I had two boys with him, and my firstborn was born with a cerebral palsy. So I kind of did all of that at the same time, and and maybe that is a little too much for some people, but I guess for me, I was able to manage it.
And then, when there are so many things that you're doing, you almost feel like, okay, I'm now juggling, right? And how do I prioritize thing? How do I make the decisions? Okay, this is by the time I want my immigration status to be cleared. This is by the time when I should be graduated. And, really a pragmatic process goes into this kind of thinking and really making sure that you meet the timelines, you meet the responsibilities, and you're doing everything in the best way possible that you can. So, what kind of approach did you use to navigate through all that? And I know that you now teach about these things and you coach people for this, and you are also an author. You recently wrote a book. So, what kind of um, what is the systematic approach that you use to do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And my systematic approach is very interesting because it apparently is an acronym that I've created, and I call it like ICPR, which kind of rhymes with the CPR word itself. Like when somebody is dying, you give them a CPR to resuscitate them, right? It's the same approach I do for myself because whenever I wonder that how am I going to go to the next trajectory in my life, because I already see the vision. I already know I need to go, but I have to make the means to hop there. I use the ICPR because I is like me. I have to resuscitate myself. C for courage, P for perseverance, and R for resilience. And these are the attributes that I created, or I maybe developed it by having to go through these many times, because just like you work out, right? You work out a muscle and you become really muscular person. You're not born being muscular, you have to work on it. Similarly, these muscles that I have created for having the courage or having the perseverance or having the resilience, I had to work on it, but I used it in my strategy. And courage definition pretty much says it, that courage doesn't mean that you are like you kind of know what you're doing or you know where you're going. No, courage actually means you know that it's scary, you know that it's hard, but you still do it because it matches your vision. And that was my thing, that I knew. I had that inner knowing that I'm going to work on projects that are going to break the technological boundaries. So that was something I knew. It was in my knowing. Now how the rubber meets the road is where the work comes, right? Because we all have dreams, we all have vision, but if you just keep it in a vision and never meet it, then how is that going to become your materialized manifestation? That is the power that we all have in us to make your dream a reality. And I have done it. And that's why I teach about it.
That's really nice. And I really like this, this approach of courage, perseverance, and resilience, because we talk a lot about it, that we should be resilient and we should have courage, but it's obviously never easy to be resilient and to have courage, and especially to have perseverance, I think we need to have courage. So it's really interesting, the whole analogy. It's I think it really, the courage is the first thing that helps you to really choose your path and then stay focused on it, so you can evaluate, okay, um this is good, this is gonna, this is where I need to stay long term, and you can make the decision based on, but decision can never be made, especially difficult one, if you don't have courage, right? So
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, you have to keep evaluating where you are and where you're going. And are you okay where you're going? Because that is a constant um, evaluation that has to occur for you to get to where you need to. But there are certain visions, like if you are very strong about it, then you will meet them. Like for, and that was the thing, right? Like for me, even when I got married in my 1 hour interview, I made sure that I will be able to continue my education because that was one of the highest priority for me going in the marriage. And to me, I knew that I'm going to have arranged marriage because that was the culture method I had to follow. And I had accepted that as like going from 11th grade to 12th grade. Like that was not
mhm,
even, I wasn't even planning on doing anything to mess that up because I had seen what happens to people when they mess it up. Their life gets challenged. Sometimes they get married off to somebody that they don't want. I mean, it's never like, I never had any success story for two people falling in love and living a happy life, at least from my perspective. So I was pragmatic. I was like, when people were coming to me with love letters, I'm like, no way, Jose, we're not going there because that would be not good for you or me. So I was just like, let's just keep it simple, right? So there were things like, and that's what it's an art of being in this world, right? That how do we navigate our life with the constraint that we're born with and in our surrounding and still do what you can do. And that was my whole thing that I kept that in mind that where I am and where I want to go and how can I do that and how can I go there with full integrity following my core principles.
that's really amazing. Yeah, I think I can relate very well to you, um because, well, I had a different circumstances because my parents really, helped me, and also I was able to, it was a different situation, but also now we are looking like 30 years forward, right? So the
Yeah.
world changed, and the society is changing as well. So it's different now, but I can imagine, because even in my situation, I always knew, okay, society is going to, come forward and talk about things that I probably wouldn't like or would not want to hear. But I think with courage and resilience, oh, if you really don't pay heed to things which takes you away from your focus and direction, not just in personal life but also professionally, I think that really helps to not to, block some voices that you don't want to hear. So yeah, it's really true
And you're
to.
right, and completely right about peer pressure and voices, because even for me, like the very first time when I went through my first divorce, right, from my Muslim husband, I mean, there was not a single person who was agreeing with my decision. Even the people that I consider a really close friend, they were not agreeing with it either, because nobody imagined that someone like me who has never lived in America by myself now, after being divorced, how am I going to live with two boys where one is a special child? Like to them, it seemed like I'm really completely nuts because nobody has done that. First of all, no, I mean, how often do you hear that the girl comes to America, we arrange marriage, and then she divorces her husband and lives alone? We don't hear that, right? So most of the time, the survival rate is pretty low in that in the mindset. And then having to have a child that's special, it's like, okay, now you have even more bigger challenges to overcome. How are you going to do all that? So nobody agreed with my doing what I was doing. And it was a very hard place to be because and that is the one thing I want to tell everybody who's listening to this is that when you make a choice to do what you think is right, it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. And most of the time, at least in my case, I got resistance. I didn't get anyone to say, okay, Shanaz, let me be your helper. No, I didn't. I had to take the step. And once I took the step and went through my own, you know, like a lot of challenges, I would start seeing that people would see that I'm willing to show up for myself. Then they were willing to show up for me. And slowly but surely, I started attracting people who were wanting to help me. But it didn't happen. So it's almost like you're entering in a dark room, right? And you don't know what you're going to see there, but you know you're supposed to go there. So you have to go there, and the light will turn on, but it may not for the first 5 minutes. So are you willing to, I mean, that is called leap of faith, right? That is where I was scared. And I can tell you one thing, Zainab, is that the first time when I started sleeping alone, because sleeping alone in the darkness to me was a huge thing for me. That has been my childhood pattern. Like I always slept with my sister, and whenever she would go with friends, I was like so worried that I have nobody to sleep with. So I actually would basically beg my mom if she can sleep with me or if I can sleep with her, and she would be like not interested in that. So I would say I'll do all these chores, I'll do everything. Like she knew that I had this huge fear of sleeping alone, and that was my large pattern that I had to overcome. And when I got divorced, I was so scared about, because my two boys were only 2 and 4 years old, and they were not, I was supposed to protect them because they're like, mama, protect me. So I had no protection. And I can tell you, the very first night when I started sleeping in the house alone, anything that would make a noise would get me scared. Like even like at one point, I remember that the noise was so loud, and I was wondering what it is. And it was a plastic bag that was making noise because of the wind. It was like thundering outside, and I had to like really like brave up. I go on a search to figure out what this noise is coming from. I find this bag and I'm like, holy shit. And it took me so much courage just to even get out of my room on an exploration mission to understand where the noise is coming from, because I knew that I'm the only one who can protect my babies. So being a mother actually kind of gave me the courage that I didn't even have it for myself. It was like, I have to protect my babies, I have to do whatever. And I even remember a few of my friends said that, do you want to sleep at my place, because they knew that I was scared. And I tell them that if I sleep tonight at your place, then what about the next night? What about the next night? I mean, I have walking on this path that I have no idea when am I going to run into another partner to even have that opportunity to sleep with someone else. So I can't rely on that, right? So it was a very hard decision, but I was very practical about that too. I knew that I have to get over this on my own, no matter how hard it is.
Facing your fears, right? That's courage. And that's what you brought into you when it was needed. Even sometimes it seems like a small thing, but if you're afraid of it, it's a big thing for you, right? So, and just facing those apparently small things, which are not really small, facing those, I think, is the first step to courage. And then staying to it and, really making it a practice, looking it every time in the eye, then it's not a fear anymore. That's perseverance. And then, then you're resilient. Yeah. So I think, yeah, lovely talking to you, Shanaz. I think this is really, so we were asked only to have 5 minute or 10 minutes podcast because that's the time we can really spare from our science community. But it's really, pleasure talking to you and getting some insights into, and really the idea of this podcast is to getting in exchange with people from different fields, and then really inspiring each other, because in the end, um, either we are a science community or we are an organization, in the end we are all a human community and we just learn from each other. So it's so much more than just being, one group or anything. So we are really pleased that you gave us some time and we were able to connect, and we should talk more later again.
Yes,
And we
we
should
definitely
connect
will do
more.
that. And just for everybody who's listening, yeah, I just had a book out. It's called The Quantum Being. It's on Amazon. So you just type The Quantum Being, you're going to find my book. And my website is just my first and last name.com, which is shanazsoni.com. And it has all the information about my workshop and my services. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity, Zainab. And yes, we're going to definitely have more of these opportunities. So thank you very much, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Thank you very much, Shanaz.